All right, welcome everyone to our November meeting. I'm going to share my screen. We just have a few announcements before we have our keynote speaker. If you saw on the Slack, or if you didn't, Orally Thane and the Empowering Allies Committee are looking for allyship resources, especially related to disability. And as we know, disability can be both visible and invisible. So she is looking to get experiences from individuals with disabilities that are not always visible right away. And if you have that experience, if you have resources that could speak to that experience, please DM her, or if you need her email, I can email that to you as well. Second announcement is that IWB is supporting NBD 2022. So National Biomechanics Day is looking for volunteers to help with the Biomechanics Library. One of our members, Natalia, is interested in spearheading that effort. So it would be a great opportunity if you're interested in teaching, outreach, learning website design, anything like that, please DM or email her. Should be kind of a fun, creative opportunity. The third announcement is just that Black Biomechanics Association is starting a Biomechanics and Gratitude YouTube series. The goal is to compile videos from BBA allies that answers some different questions that speak to the gratitude you have for biomechanics in this field, really bringing us together. So there's more information on the Slack. I can also email you more information if you are interested in submitting a video. I'm going to pass to Ashley for the World Congress Biomechanics.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Collmore, and together with Katie Canals and Steph Ross, we are co-chairing a special session at World Congress on Biomechanics next summer. So if you're interested in helping plan this event, we have a great team with people from all different career levels, all different parts of the world. So my email's there. You can just shoot me an email and I can include you on anything moving forward. And you don't have to be attending World Congress on Biomechanics to help. So if you are interested, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for spearheading that effort. Last announcement is just to check out the IWB blogs. We have some really great content, including conference networking with social anxiety that Dr. Sarah Mowdy just posted. Ashley actually just posted a few blogs recently about tips for grant writing, which are really great, and then different mindfulness and meditation resources. So if you're interested in writing a blog, please email Alexa, but please read those blogs. I think they will be really helpful. All right, and I'll pass it to Rossi to do our introduction for today.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker for this month's meeting. So Damien Lacroix is Professor of Mechanobiology in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Sheffield in the UK. Professor Lacroix's research covers bone mechanobiology and spine biomechanics. He has more than 20 years of academic experience and leadership. He has co-founded the coaching platform called Success in Academia, and that's where I first found out about this platform, and I wanted to get in touch and invite him for our monthly meeting. Through this platform, he's offering coaching sessions to share his experience on success and provide tools to ensure better work-life balance. So I'm very, very excited to listen to what Professor Lacroix is going to tell us about his experience and share his tips and tools that we can use to be successful, but at the same time have a balanced work-life session. So over to you, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Rusty, for this introduction, and good morning and good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So depending on where you are in the world, it's my great pleasure to be here, and that's kind of a very different kind of presentation that I would normally give. It's not scientific, it's purely based around career, and I think in particular around leadership, and I think how you can develop your leadership skills to, I think, to better do your job as a leader in your group or in your future group, but also, to balance with work with your personal life, which I think is also very important. As Rusty says, so my name is Damien Lacroix, and I'm a professor of biomechanics at the University of Sheffield. So I'm also the director and the co-founder of Success in Academia, which is a company I just created a few months ago to help academics to navigate better throughout their career. So obviously I have a conflict of interest in the presentation, but I created this company because I felt that there was a need for it, and I'm particularly hopeful on how we can actually improve the life of academics in general. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so first I'd like to actually start by discussing a little bit about the burnout. So I think the burnout is an increasing problem within the workforce in general, and the COVID pandemic has only really increased this even further. So according to a Canadian study, it affects particularly younger men and younger women that are aged between 20 and 35, and also women over 55 years old. Now it's been shown that those who work more than 40 hours a week are 6 times as likely as those who do not to actually develop a burnout. So this is something that is going to affect quite a lot of people in the population in general. Now, academia is also being affected by burnout. So there was a recent Nature article on US faculty members where it was found that 70% of the respondents felt stressed in 2020, which is more than double than that in 2019. So, in addition, it affected many more women than men. So, I feel that the burnout is really something that, we need to tackle, and actually not to pretend that it's not a problem for academics. And this is, in fact, what brings me to my personal story about burnout. So I actually suffered burnout a few years ago without quite realizing it. So, it wasn't actually burnout when you actually end up, getting, really ill. But I did get a very late alarm signal one day I was at work. And in that day, I had an early meeting with some clinicians on my way back from the meeting to the office. And I stopped by a coffee shop. And when I sat down with my coffee overlooking at the window, I actually suddenly felt a huge relief in my stomach, and my breath suddenly calmed down in a way that I had never experienced before. And it had a very long lasting effect, throughout the day. And I really realized actually on that day that something was wrong. But I didn't quite connect that it was really a burnout, but I could see that something was not going right. Now, a few months later, after this experience, I actually took a 2-year leave from the university, and that wasn't related actually to my burnout. And this is a view of the area where I lived for more than a year in Spain, to basically take care of my kids. And what was strange is that even after a few months I was on my leave and not working at all, I actually had signs of anxiety whenever I was checking my professional emails. And this is when I realized retrospectively that I had suffered from burnout for quite a few years, probably before I took my leave. So it can be something that I think is very insidious and is taking time to develop and to really, for people to realize. Now, I'd like to step back a little bit and rewind on how I came back to this situation, and I think which advice I can, give you to manage your career. So first, let me, briefly describe my journey so far. So I did my undergraduate mechanical engineering degree in Lyon, in France. Then I moved to Trinity College Dublin to do my master and a PhD in biomechanics. After that, I moved to Toulouse to work for Smith & Nephew. Before I actually moved quickly to Barcelona, first at the Technical University of Catalonia, and then having my own group actually at the Institute for Bioengineering of Catalonia. So in 2008, so I finished my PhD 2001 and end of 2001, end of 2000, and then I actually got my first group really in 2008. And then I moved to Sheffield for chair position and stayed here since then, apart from my 2-year leave. So I think it's, I've moved quite a bit, but I've stayed quite a few years as well in each places. So it's probably relatively common for an academic career, I would say. Now, first of all, I'd like to define with you what is a group and use this, I think, as an opportunity to describe briefly my bio as well. So, my definition starts, with 2 people, like in this picture where this is me, actually my supervisor, Patrick Prendergast, doing the ESB Congress in 2000. And I think you can already practice your leadership skills, whenever you supervise an undergraduate student or PhD student. After my PhD, I joined quite a large group in biomaterials in Barcelona, where I was the kind of biomechanics expert. I had opportunities to get great interactions already with permanent academics. Then I became a group leader at the Institute for Bioengineering of Catalonia, and I had initially a small group of PhD students and 1 postdoc, and that group grew, and I practiced very significantly my leadership skill during this time. I must say it was probably the group size and the career stage where I was the most productive. So it was probably the most creative part of my research. Then I moved to Sheffield and developed with Marco Conti here, a very large group. And this gave me the opportunity to actually lead in a different level, since that group included senior academics like Gwen Riley, Claudia Mazza, some of you might know, and over junior academics like Enrico Dallara, Sharon Lee, and other people. For each size, I think there's a different dynamics and different ways to exert your leadership styles, but I think it's good to already consider it, from the very beginning. Now, I've tried to reflect, what has made me successful early in my career, and it's really not to brag with you, but I think instead to share what I think could be helpful for you. So I think that first of all, the most important thing I did early was to trust my intuition for emerging topics. So my PhD thesis, I think, was very novel at the time, and I wanted to continue in that direction, but do something a bit different. And this is how I moved into computational mechanobiology, and in particular in the area of tissue engineering, which was kind of perfect because I was in the biomaterials group, but no one else was developing computer models of scaffolds. So this was a really emerging and growing topic, and I quickly became an expert in this topic. Now, at the same time, I also started working on the spine, and the virtual physical human initiative was growing. So I also jumped into developing patient-specific modeling of the spine, which is an approach that is still currently being used and developed. So I think trusting my intuition was really key in those early years. Now, the second aspect I got involved very early was into scientific society, which is the European Society of Biomechanics. And this was first as a multimedia director during the Congress of the ESB 2000. But then I was elected to the council and eventually became the president of the society. And I really learned a lot during that time while I was working, with very talented people, and it gave me a great visibility, contacts as well for my research. So, it's really something I would recommend you to get involved too in the society. And, like this group, the International Women's Biomechanics, is something great to be involved and very, very active. And, it's fulfilling, and it's something you'll get a lot of benefit out of that as well. The third thing I would like to encourage you is to get support as much as possible from mentors. So I was lucky to be part of a large biomaterials group where I could move quickly into academic, staff and group leader, and I was given responsibilities very early on. And really, this led me to participate into writing large grant proposals and learn a lot for my own proposals later on. Finally, I managed to get some grants, which enabled me to grow my group quickly. And I started with small, with some national funding grants, but also participated into European grants as a partner. And I learned a lot through that. And that enabled me to, got a European grant as a coordinator, but also got a European Research Council starting grant, which really enabled me to increase significantly my research footprint, really. Now, I'd like to move on a little bit to leadership. And so first of all, I'd like to make the distinction between leading and managing. I think that many universities have adopted an enterprise mindset, which is based on financial sustainability and performance competition, with over universities trying to attract the best students as possible. Now, I think that some performance indicators have been borrowed from the business sector, but I think that the universities work in a very different way. So I think managing is very much objective driven, where the pursuit is to attain a set of objectives which are usually defined on a yearly basis. And the role of the manager is to create environments so that those objectives are met in an organized, timely and efficient manner. Now, for me, a leader has a very different role. So the role of the leader is mainly to support their team in achieving those goals and objectives. So it supports the strengths really of their team members, and it helps them to go through challenges, to set directions, and have a long-term visions which really goes beyond the yearly objectives. So I think that leading a team means that you take care of everyone within the team, and that you ensure that each member of the team feels supported all along the way when they work with you then. Now, when you lead your group, there's a few points which I think are important to follow. The first thing is you're the person who should be able to provide the vision of the group and why you're doing what you're doing. So in addition, building a group takes time and the growth is slow. So my advice really is to always think long-term instead of short-term. So, think more, for example, about quality instead of quantity. Then I think it's important that for you to be familiar with the different leadership styles that are, traditionally recognized, and for which we don't have time here to go into details. And you can have a tendency to have a more natural leadership style, and it's good to know it and to practice it. But I think it's also important to adapt your style to each individual and each situation. So you cannot always be an authoritative or supportive leader. You need to be able to exert all the different leadership styles, depending on the situation. Leading by values is not always the best approach, but I think that in academia it works very often. So most people in academia are there because of their values. So it's good to share your values with others in your group so that you are in tune, or others know why you're doing some things. So it's particularly important for a new member in your team. So as a leader, it's also important to know what are the values of your team members so that you can adapt yourself. And that doesn't mean that your values should be the same than your team members. For example, someone in your team may have very strong objection to work with embryonic stem cells, and that might not be a problem for you. Now, in such a case, I think you need to demonstrate that you care for the value of that person, and that, for example, you will never force them to use embryonic stem cells. But you can make them understand why it is important for you to work on this topic, and to accept that others in the team are keen to work on this research too. So I think sharing values and having a mutual respect for them, I think is the best way to create trust, I think, in a team, which I think is key here. So as a leader, you need to set goals and objectives for each member of the team. And what I do is to stretch everyone, but not by the same amount. So my view is that everyone should do their best, and best is different for every person. So you need to understand where each person in your team stands and by how much you can stretch them in a yearly basis. And that stretch will also vary over time, so depending on the situation. So for example, you can't stretch in the same manner a first-year PhD student than when they are in their third year. So you have to take into account that. So finally, I think a leader achieves output through other people's work. So I think support is key, and I think leading is listening to the team and helping them to unlock situations or find new paths when they are in challenging situations. Now, there's a few points that I'd like to quickly highlight for a leader to get a high performance team. I think it's essential to have a clear vision and objectives for the next 5 years and be able to communicate them to your team. So, you're the captain setting the direction. So it has to be clear, I think, in your head. Otherwise, you cannot communicate it to others. People can't guess what you expect from them. So I think it's important to define clearly what you expect from them. For example, when you hire a PhD student, it's good to tell them what you think, they should achieve throughout their PhD in terms of publications and participation to conferences. And same for a postdoc, how many and what kind of publications do you expect, from them already in the first year, for example. I think that competition is, as it is often seen in some labs, in the States, for example, is not very healthy in the long term. And I think it can lead to very good short-term results in terms of publications, for example, but I think it can be quite terrible for the unity of the team and the long-term outputs. However, I do believe in the virtue of friendly rivalry. So I think it's important to encourage everyone to do their best, to reward publicly each success, to motivate others to do the same, really. Now, your communication to the team, I think, to each individual, among the team members and from your team to you, I think, is essential. So this will avoid, mistakes, misunderstanding, and delays. So I think you need to be able to favor, communication whenever you have meetings or have mechanisms to have a free and honest, transparent communication in your team. I think it's, as a leader, I think it's your responsibility to promote a culture of improvement. So it's up to you to discourage people from taking shortcuts, to put a structure in place that will favor the integration of new members in your team, to ensure legacy in your research, to have everyone striving to do their best. And don't forget, I think that you need to act as a role model within your own team, and that's really important. Now, I think accountability is always key in a team, and even though you're ultimately the person who should take responsibility for whatever happens in your group, you should also share leadership and accountability by exposing your team member to external assessment, like at conferences in particular. So, it's important to prepare your team to external evaluation so that you can share common experiences in which everyone within the team can actually grow and learn from that. Now, you always need, I think, to keep the growth mindset for all your team and not for yourself. So celebrating success is key, whether it is a publication, an award, whatever recognition, I think is good. You just, I think, need to be consistent so that you don't appear to favor some people more than others. And celebrating as a team, I think, is a good way to actually boost the morale and the productivity of your team. And finally, I think it's always good to promote autonomy. So, encourage or reward personal initiatives where there has been internal or external collaboration. So if one of your students contacts, a colleague of yours without telling you, don't think that it was because of lack of trust towards you, but rather, sign that the person actually is ambitious and wants to grow. So if you think that it was inappropriate, then help that person to grow and both, would benefit from that. Now, I think that as a leader, it's always good to know who inspires you and why those people inspire you. So, I've put on a list of people here that I find inspiring, and I value highly freedom and critical thinking, and I think that it reflects in the people that I chose. Those people also, I think, give me hope. They give me strength. They give me courage, and to do the things that I want. And really, I recommend you to actually do some similar exercise and see who are the people who actually inspire you. Now, when you lead your team, I think it's important to know them. And there's many different ways to do that. I'm just showing here the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which is an introspective self-report questionnaire indicating different psychological preferences in how people perceive the world and they make decisions. So there are different categories to indicate where each one has their own preferences. So whether you are, you know, an extrovert or an introvert, how new information is understood and interpreted, how you make decisions, and what is your lifestyle preferences. So this indicator has been well criticized, but I think that, you know, it can be helpful to see where, you know, are your personal preferences and what are your, you know, your team preferences, so that you can see different personalities and compatibilities, I think, among your different member teams. Now, another tool that I also find useful is to know the development stages of the members of your team. And this particularly applies to PhD students. And the first stage is the apprentice. So this is the person who does not know that, you know, he does know. So this is typically the PhD student who is starting, very motivated and eager to change the world, but does not know that, you know, very much of the topic. Then the second stage is the initiated. And in that case, they now know, you know, that they don't know, and that makes them insecure. So actually, they need your emotional support. So you have to be there to support them quite a lot. Now, the third stage is the competence stage, which, you know, would be typically in a PhD student, it would be their, you know, their second or third year, and in that case, usually the motivation goes down as their learning curve is decreasing. So they need to be more challenged, and you know, whenever they meet with you, and that's up to you to provide in that challenging environment. And finally, the last stage is the expert, who is typically the PhD student who's finishing their thesis or the postdoc. So they master the subjects and they want to take on more responsibility, so that, you know, you need to be able to trust them and help them to, you know, delegate the simpler task than to graduate students, for example. So I think that, you know, many of you probably can relate to the different stages for the people around you. And I think it's helpful to have that in mind when you supervise students, for example. Now, I'd like to move on a little bit to the work-life experience, work-life balance, as I think that, you know, this is an important topic. So quickly, I'd just like to list, you know, what was my day or week before my leave in 2018. So I work close to, you know, close to 50 hours a week. I was trying to do some exercise by commuting on my bike every day. I had this rule of no email or work on weekends and vacation, and I was actually pretty good at it. I was, you know, quite some time away from home at meetings, conferences, and this put a bit of stress, you know, on my wife. And over the years, I think that I was feeling more and more stressed with mental fatigue. And this is really what, you know, altogether led to my gradual burnout. You know, so those are two pictures in 4 years interval. And I don't know if you can see, you know, the effect of the gradual burnout, apart from the hairstyles, but, you know, that's it's up to you. Now, since I returned to academia, my lifestyle is actually quite different. So I work less, but I'm much more focused and more intentional when I do things, actually. I'm more of a morning person, so I do the things that matter to me in the morning. So, for example, I don't schedule any meeting before 10 a.m. I don't do any email before 10 a.m. I really try to stick to do the things that really matters for me, which I think are important. So I really tend to be more active than reactive. And I think that's the challenge a lot of us have to do. Now, I plan with more intention my week by reviewing daily and weekly what I'm going to be doing the following week. And then I still try to have some positive lifestyle habits, you know, like no email on the weekends and vacation, doing exercise, meditation. I value highly sleep. I've got some small hacks to improve the immune system. You know, I think that good nutrition is important. I enjoy time with my kids and my wife. And, you know, you can see that now it's not only my hairstyle that has changed. So, you know, I think work-life balance is a very personal approach, but, you know, I would still like to give my top 5 advice and see whether you can find them, you know, any useful to you, you know, if you try them. So first, I think it's very important to be organized and strategic in your attentions. So, I think that you should set your agenda and not let others tell you what is important. So, responding to email is not important to you. It's important for the sender only, but not to you. Second, I think that, we are fortunate to have a lot of flexibility in our timetable. So, if my wife cannot bring my son for school and I have no meeting, which I normally, don't schedule, then I can bring him, without feeling stressed, as I know that I'll be able to catch up later on, in the evening or maybe in another day. So I think that's what this flexibility, I think, helps me to go through stress as well. Third, and I think this is a difficult one, is living in the present moment. So, if you can really be present in what you do and with the people you interact, so whether at work or at home, I think it will make a big difference in how you actually show up during the day. So that's key, but difficult to do. Fourth one, I think nobody's asking you, to become a Nobel Prize. So it's up to you to set the bar and what are your expectations. So, don't look what other people think you should be doing, but rather, what you feel is right for you at that moment in your life. It might also be different, depending where you are in your life. But that's, it's up to you to set the expectations. And finally, I'm a big fan of practicing stress releasing activities. So just pick the one that works for you, but I think that's helpful as well. Okay, after listening and reading a lot of information around health, I've actually come up with those 5 pillars of healthy living, which I call SENSE, using the acronyms of the 5 pillars. So the first pillar is sleep. And many studies have shown the importance of sleep. And with a lack of sleep, you're likely to perform adequately and take the right decisions during the day. So I think that's why it's critical. Exercise is also critical to maintain your health. I think nutrition is key, and we should all avoid processed food as much as possible. Many studies have shown that happiness is very much related to the quality of your social interactions and your spiritual connection. So I think that's also important here, and you can have very good relationship through virtual interactions, but face-to-face is probably better in this sense. Finally, I think the way you handle your emotions, in particular stress, I think is key for your own balance and how you show up with others. So, I strongly believe that if any of you work on each of those pillars, I think you will quickly see the difference and feel actually much better. Now, I feel that in this presentation today, I should talk about female uniqueness. And it might seem a bit ironic, I think, for a senior white male to talk about female uniqueness to an audience of women. But I think that it is an important topic, and I also feel that I need to act as a role model for other males as well. So, I'm probably in a minority here, but I think that gender equality is actually a false target. And I think that, we should be clear that men and women are physiologically different, and that, we have different experiences, and in particular, I think regarding raising children. So therefore, I think that, motherhood uniqueness actually needs to be better comprehended. And I think we should help in particular mothers to have a balance that suits, each of them. Now, during the pandemic, we had discussion in my departments on how we could actually support our female academics. And, I was very much in favor of all that. But I stressed that we should also encourage our male academics to support their partner as much as possible. And I think that would probably do a lot more for gender equality in the world as well. Now, I also think that we need to remove taboos in the workplace regarding women physiology. So, for example, I wish that one of my, female co-workers would come to me one day and saying that, she was in pain with her period and that she would prefer to cancel the meeting that we have together because she's unlikely to take the right decision. I think that should be perfectly normal. And I wish that, you know, males would actually be more aware of menstrual cycle, and that starts at home, you know, with the freedom to discuss this topic with your partner and children, for example. And you know, I recommend actually listening to this podcast here from Stephanie Estima, which I think has been very enlightening to me, but I think also I would say it's very enlightening for women too, to understand how they can best manage their menstrual cycle. And the same can be said for menopause. And you know, some efforts I think are being made, for example, in Sheffield, by providing this PEPI Health Menopause app to all staff, but probably a lot more can be done as well. Now, there's also a lot of, I think, common bias that we need to fight, and you know, starting with recruitment, where we know that, you know, women are better in real than on paper, no surprise. So, you know, we have to introduce positive bias to have more female applying and going at the interview stage, where they are better or just as good as male. Promotion is another topic where women don't value themselves highly, and male managers often underestimate their achievements. And I think that this needs to change as well. There's still some perception that you know, when woman has a kid, the family commitment is perceived as you know, lack of commitment at work. And again, we need to ensure, I think, that both mothers and fathers have equal responsibilities and choice in raising their children. Finally, I think, you know, there is a lack of women at the top, and we need to think to be able to you know, for women to go up at the top, and by changing all the misconception I think we have around, you know, raising children and commitment to work in particular. Now, finally, I think it's extremely important for women to act as a role model, and for men to put women in positions, you know, where they can also act as a role model. So, you know, just as an example, I think that it's crucial to have women in key positions at conferences, such as, you know, keynote speaker, session moderators, you know, etc. So that, you know, young female and male researchers see that it is, you know, kind of, quote, normal to see women in leadership positions. So, you know, I really encourage you to act in your daily life as a role model, whether it's at work or in your personal life. And it's, you know, starting small. I think it's small steps are important whenever it's going in the right direction. Okay, I was asked by Rusty to also present briefly what was Success in Academia, it's a company that I founded. So as I said, it was recently created, and our mission is to serve academics to excel at their work while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. So, you know, our target audience is anyone who's willing to work in academia, you know, in a permanent manner. So I think most likely, you know, that would go from postdoc to full professor. And I've partnered with Melba Navarro, who's a friend of mine for a long time ago, but who also has experience both in coaching and in academia. And we have developed a website where we can provide, or we will provide some resources, which you know, we will populate over time. And if you want to stay informed of our development, I invite you to register to our newsletter, where we will give you some advice every month. Now, I'm very happy actually to say that we've just finished our 10-week academic coaching program, which include the 5 parts that you see here. And each part includes extensive tutorial sheets where you can answer to the questions that we offer you, so that you actually can personalize what we recommend to you to your personal case then. I think that those tutorial sheets are actually excellent to make you grow and guide you towards then a successful career. Now, we're also planning to introduce many other services, including a yearly subscription model that would include then the peer support mastermind meetings, private support group one-to-one coaching sessions, and more really. Now, if you want to know more about this, please visit our website and subscribe then to our monthly newsletter. Now, I'd like to conclude with those 3 quotes The first one is from Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, who said, the present moment is all you ever have. There is never a time when your life is not this moment. And I just think it's so true. You know, the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. It's only the moment that exists. So it's important. And then there's this quote from Tony Robbins, who's a well-known coach. There's no such a thing as failure. There are only results. And he's not the only one saying that. Lots of people are saying very similar things. And finally, I think a quote from Brendan Burchard, who is another high-performance coach. Believe in your ability to figure things out. With enough time, effort, and discipline, you will learn and grow and achieve. You will bring your heart and mission and dreams to fruition. Trust in yourself. So I'd like to thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed this presentation, please help me spread the words around your colleagues so that we can make a bigger impact. And I'll be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much, Damien. Yes, we have a few questions here, but before I go into those, I have one question which I struggle quite a lot with, actually. So I'm very keen with getting involved with being a collaborator, getting involved with small project and side project alongside of what I'm currently doing. So I do find it very difficult to say no with the fear of missing out, or with the fear of, if I say no at this point, I'll be missing out later on. That could actually be the defining point of my career. How do you manage that, and how do you go about kind of setting yourself, saying I'm going to only say yes to such things that I know, or I have a gut feeling that will result into something better?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think when you're early in your career, it's quite difficult to say no. But I think it's important. So that's why I think for me it's very crucial that you define what are your objectives, in the next 5 years. Because if you know what is the direction, at least you can check whenever you've got some request, whether that would go in your direction or not. And if your objectives are sufficiently broad, I would say that, if you identify the request that doesn't move you, in the direction where you want to go, then you should say no. Because that will free up some time for you to actually go in the direction where you want to go. And it can be quite difficult to do it because, as you said, there is this fear of missing out. But I think if you've got the clarity of where you want to go, then it's much easier to take the decision to say no. And it's much easier to also explain it to the person. So if you've got a request, and it's never nice to say no to somebody, but you've got to explain them, that you've got some priority, and if you do that, then you put your priority, as a second importance, and that shouldn't be the case. Now, with that said, as I said to you through the presentation, I think that trusting your intuition is important too. So. I've benefited a lot from this in my career early on, where I wasn't planning to necessarily, for example, to work in the spine, but I got opportunities to do that, and this has brought me loads of benefits. Now, and that's why I think trusting your intuition is important. And if you see that you've got a request, and that request is really gonna potentially bring you lots of benefits to you, and it's still aligned with what you want to do in general, then I think you should trust your intuition. So it's maybe not a yes and no answer, but I think that's it's important as well to trust intuition as well.
Yeah. So we have some conversation going on about not checking email before a certain time of the day, which some people find it that if they follow that sort of organization, that might help them with and not be as anxious in the start, especially if you're checking your emails at the beginning of the day, and then it might not set you up right for the rest of the day.
I mean, I've listened to I'm going to answer about the email just after, but I've listened to lots of people who are very successful, not in academia, but in general. And, you know, what I keep hearing from them is that you should not touch your phone, you know, in the first hour or two, just after you wake up. Because, you know, going through social media, going through the news is not going to bring you positive vibes, really. And instead, I think you should, you know, focus about the things that is going to make you, I think, in a good environment. So whether it's, you know, it's talking with your friends, you know, your flatmates, or whether it's with your family, and then starting the day with, you know, doing a list of things that you want to accomplish during the day, and actually starting working on that, or whether that's, you know, starting around meditation or around exercise. And it's only after an hour or two that you start, you know, checking your social media. But a lot of people are saying that, you know, it does make a big difference to them. Now, but the email, you know, I find it very difficult too. I've got I've set to myself a rule that, yeah, I don't do it, you know, right as the first task, and I usually stick to that. But I've got another rule, which is I'm trying to only work on it for a certain amount of time during the day, and when I'm finished, I close it. So, you know, and I don't look at it again. And so whoever is writing me an email usually is never going to get an answer during the same day. You know, it's at least going to be the day after. And I've put it actually in my signature on my email that's what I do. So, you know, I set the expectation as well for others, so they can see that, you know, they shouldn't expect an answer from me. If there is something urgent, I actually put my phone number, so they can reach me if there is something very urgent. But if not, you know, they can probably wait. And I try to do that. It's not always easy. I try also to schedule it at a time where I'm not at the best. So, because for me, email is not the most important part of my job. You know, it's a very time-consuming task. I spend a lot of time on this, but it's not what actually moves the needle for me. When I do email, I'm mostly in a reactive mode. I'm not in an active mode, so it's not really good for me. So I tend to do that after lunch or before lunch, when I'm a little bit more tired and maybe less focused, and that works better for me. But, you know, it depends if you can arrange your agenda or not. But it's difficult to stick to it. So I think, you know, I'm also not very how do you say, you know, if I can't manage it, well, it's okay. You know, I'm not going to procrastinate around that. You know, I'll try to do my best, but I'm human. So, you know, I'm not perfect.
Great. Yeah, I did really like the statement of being an active rather than reactive person when dealing with situations. So I think that kind of, there's the questions, it's a tricky one, I guess. It's more about how to navigate around colleagues in difficult situations where they are not really collaborative, but they still want the recognition of you know, recognition in some ways, either in a publication or other ways. How do you navigate that, or any tips that you suggest?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Difficult to deal with. So I think it depends a little bit on the context, but for example, you know, the example you've mentioned about, you know, people who want to have their name on a project or on a publication, which happens quite often. I tend to be as ethical as possible. So, you know, I've got a set of ethics for myself, and I try to stick to this and to make people understand that that's what are my ethics. And my ethics are not just, you know, based on my own thoughts, but it's based on what is, you know, accepted by the community. So I would, you know, very often, if there is such a case, what I would do is I would take, for example, the guidelines of a journal, on, who should be a contributor of, a co-author on a paper and who should appear, for example, in the acknowledgement. And, very often you'll see that a co-author is somebody who has, should have made a significant scientific contribution. And, it leaves, interpretations what is significant. But I think it enables you to have the discussion with that person saying, okay, well, those are the guidelines. So tell me in which way you think that you've made a significant contribution. And then this is how you can engage the discussion without being confrontating. You're actually asking the person, because maybe the person is right, maybe your judgment is wrong, and maybe they've done a lot more than actually what you had thought. So it's good to always have, the person expressing their own point of view. And then you can confront it. You can say, well, okay, I agree with that, or I didn't realize this, or actually, you know what? Yeah, but I don't think actually this was very significant. And I think there's this communication that needs to happen. Now, if another example which is quite typical is when you have people who are working with you on a project, and they committed for something, but they don't deliver on it. And you'd want them to act on this. And I think, again, the communication, I think, is key here, but you need to make them understand, the importance, I think, of the project, the importance of the objectives, and how you and them have committed to something, and that you need to find a solution to this. And the solution is not by having them not being involved. So what you want is to try to have them, being involved. So, how can they be more involved? Maybe they've got some issues around getting involved, and you're here to help them. And I think that by providing help, rather than telling them, what they should do or what they should have been doing, I think is a different attitude, and it will be, it will make them a lot more collaborative. And you can do that once. If it doesn't work, try another time. And, if eventually, you see that beyond all, efforts you've made, it still doesn't work, then I think that's, it's your task also as a leader to say, I've got to draw a line here. I can't wait anymore for you, because, the product needs to move on. So, I'm going to take you out, and somebody else is going to take your task or your responsibility. And it can be quite tough to do, but, that's part of the job as well.
Yeah, that's true. So we have another question. So this is from Maria. Thank you, Damien. Great advice. I'm curious if you feel that these objectives and style and work styles outside of academia, or works outside, so the objectives and styles work outside academia. And she's interested to hear if there are any specific points you have and learn from your colleagues outside of academia.
Yeah, I think it's, I think most of the points, they would apply for anybody. I think what's a little bit distinct in academia is maybe the freedom of well, the academic freedom in terms of, the type of works that you want to do. So, setting your own objectives, like long-term objectives, is something you can do in academia, and you might not be able to do it so much, in a company. You still have to probably set up your own yearly objectives with your line manager, but I think you've got less freedom, and also your timetabling is probably, you've got less flexibility around that. But I think all the rest pretty much, should apply really to people who are working in industry as well. And I think that, the work-life balance is probably actually even more important in industry, where you tend to have a lot more pressure than in academia, where the pressure is very often actually self-imposed pressure, where in industry it can be quite different. But I would say that all the the leadership skills and managing skills, also would be the same in industry as well.
Brilliant. I have one last question for myself. So you have achieved quite a lot of success in your career path. I wonder how much contribution from mentors you've had that helped you through your career stage.
Yeah, I think mentors are important and probably underestimated. I mean, obviously, my first mentor was my PhD supervisor, and I think that, you know, I really like supervising PhD students because I think that it's a very special relationship that you're building, you know, with a person, you know, for 3-4 years, and I regard, you know, very highly my supervisor, and I've kept very good, you know, relation with them, and I've learned so much from him. Now, I also had other mentors early on where I joined the biomaterials group. So the head of the group was Joseph Planel, and he's been a terrific mentor for me as an academic. So I think the first mentor was more about the scientific part. The second mentor was more about actually being an academic and, you know, writing projects and dealing with collaborators and all this. I learned really a lot around that. Also had some colleagues that have, you know, been mentoring me. When I was part of the European Society of Biomechanics, I had great people who were working in the council, you know, just to name a few. I think Ralph Müller and Keita Ito, you know, a lot of people probably know them. I mean, I've learned a lot from them during that time. And recently, when I was in Sheffield, even though I was in a senior position, you know, I've learned a lot from Marco Vicciconti, who's another senior person. So I think there's always ways you can learn, I think, from other people, as long as you've got, I think, this growth, you know, mindset. And there's lots of different circumstances where you can learn from other people. So it's not just limiting yourself to, you know, your line manager or your direct colleagues. Or I think lots of, you know, circumstances where you can learn from other people and get advice. I think it's important to, you know, just get some advice from other people. It doesn't mean you have to follow them, but you know, getting opinion from other people is always helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll pass back on to Anna to close the session, unless I'm not sure where Anna is. There you go, Anna.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I will also pass to Amanda too to see is everyone okay with ending the session, or are people interested in asking more questions and doing breakout rooms? We do have an 1.5 hours reserved. So, post in the chat or unmute if you have anything else. Okay. Well, thank you all so much again for attending and taking time out. Thank you so much, Professor Lacroix. That was great advice. And we will be posting this meeting. So if you have other colleagues that need to hear this, we will post the YouTube link and you can send it along to them. So thank you. Have a great day, night, week, everyone.
Thank you for your time. It was great meeting you all.
Thank you. Bye.